Taxi Driver is the story of a young cab driver named Travis Bickle, a lonely and misunderstood soul who just wants to be loved and give love in return. But when the cruel and callous world rejects him, Travis does what any well-adjusted person would do. He turns inward and transforms his self-loathing into justifiably violent and homicidal rage. This film is one of Martin Scorsese's most family-friendly works, a far cry from his more grittier tales such as Hugo and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. In all seriousness though, Taxi Driver is a dark and enthralling exploration into the psyche of a guy who describes himself as God's lonely man. It's a story that's full of dread and danger, but like a moth to the flame, we can't help but be drawn into its dark and depressing world. In the very first shot of the film, we see a yellow taxicab slowly emerge from the thick steam and haze of the city streets, as if it's arriving from the bowels of the underworld. Then the film cuts to a tight close-up of Travis Bickle's eyes, which are bathed in red light. This tells us that we will be seeing events from his perspective, and the red alludes to his inner hostility and frustrations towards the city of New York, where the movie takes place. Suffering from insomnia, Travis chooses to work nights, taking passengers to and fro all over the picturesque neighborhoods of 1970s New York, complete with tourist attractions such as pimps, prostitutes, pushers, and porno theaters, which are a dime a dozen. During the day, Travis leads a mostly aimless existence, living in a squalid studio apartment, wallowing in self-loathing, and wandering the streets as a lonely man in a sea of millions of other walking islands. Travis eventually discovers a potential remedy for his loneliness when he lays his eyes on Betsy, a volunteer for the political campaign of presidential candidate Charles Palantine. Betsy stands out in Travis's mind as an angelic beauty above the filth and degradation, a rose amongst the weeds, if you will. He develops a bit of a crush on the young lady, observing her at work in her campaign office from the insular bubble of his taxicab, which she does take notice of. He ultimately saunters into the campaign headquarters and approaches Betsy, much to the chagrin of her fellow co-volunteer Tom. At this point, even though Travis is a bit of an odd duck, he still seems to be a relatively ordinary dude, and you have to admire his gumption for stepping up to a woman he's never met before and asking her out on a date. His approach is pretty strange, yet earnest. "Hey girl, how you doing? You know, every day I drive past your workplace and I see you doing your thing, you know what I'm saying? And I figured that I would be, pardon me, fortuitous enough to make your acquaintance." "Oh, so would you like to help out with Charles Palantine's campaign?" "Oh, nah. I mean, I'm sure he's a good dude and all, but really though, every day I see you in here, looking as fine as you want to look." "Yeah. And I see that you're unhappy though. But I can be your sunshine on a cloudy day. You walk around as if it's cold outside, but I can be your month of May, if that's all right." "Oh, well, so listen, I was hoping that maybe after work you and I could, meet up around the way for some coffee and pie, you know what I'm talking about? We can chill, we can converse." Notice how I said converse, because conversate is not a real word, no matter what some people believe. But anyway, what you want to do, girl? I like the cut of your jib. It's a date." "Aight, that's what's up. And my name is Travis, by the way." "Betsy." "Aight, Betsy, I'm gonna let you do your thing. I'm gonna see you after work, girl, aight? I'll holla." So after work, Travis and Betsy meet up for some coffee and pie, and while their date goes smoothly enough, it's also edited together in a pretty interesting way. On one of the audio commentaries on the Taxi Driver Blu-ray, University of Virginia professor Robert Kolker makes some very interesting observations of this scene. He notes that in scenes featuring a conversation between two characters, you always see a two-shot of one person talking, and the back of the person they're talking to in the foreground. Now this is true for Betsy, as when she speaks to Travis, we see the back of his head in the frame. This suggests her ease of connecting with people. However, whenever Travis speaks, Betsy is completely absent from the frame. This reinforces Travis's sense of loneliness. He tries to be a part of a larger world to make interpersonal connections with others, but his awkwardness belies his simmering rage. He's aware of how to act like a nice, ordinary guy in situations like his date, but he seems to be more or less going through the motions. When Betsy jokingly calls Travis a walking contradiction in reference to a Chris Christopherson song, Travis looks as if he's not sure if he should interpret her remark as a joke or as a pointed insult. Despite the slight weirdness, Betsy remains intrigued enough to meet up with Travis again for a second date. It appears that he's well on his way towards forming an honest-to-goodness connection with another human being. Unfortunately, he hilariously undoes all of the goodwill he built up with Betsy by taking her to a porn theater, which is an honest mistake. I mean, really, I thought her reaction was a little too harsh. She should have been a little bit easier on the guy. But in any case, Travis is totally befuddled at Betsy's anger and disgust, and later on tries to reconcile things with her over the phone. Unfortunately, the damage is irreversible, and as Travis's attempt to apologize to Betsy nosedives, the camera tracks away from him and stops at the long, empty hallway nearby. All that remains for the man is a door which leads to nowhere except isolation. Betsy's labeling of Travis as a walking contradiction is a pretty accurate assessment of his character. For example, he's disgusted by all the smut and seediness of the city, yet he regularly goes to porn theaters. Yet even when he's there, he doesn't seem to be titillated in any way by what he's watching. Rather, he looks on with a confused curiosity as if he's struggling to comprehend what coitus, albeit staged coitus, looks like. And although Travis voices his disdain towards the so-called filth of his environment, he chooses to wallow in the muck and mire instead, not only during his working hours, but also during the daytime, which consists of trips to XXX theaters and watching television in his dilapidated apartment. The film, as it follows Travis's perspective, also conveys subtle hints to the viewer that his mind state is askew. What is most telling is his unspoken yet evident perceptions of black men. Notice how in every instance Travis comes across a black person, that person always appears to be either a pimp, a hustler, a criminal, or some other type of shady character. Also, the cashier who Travis tries to flirt with at the porno theater early on coldly rebuffs his advances. Even one of his fellow cabbies jokingly refers to him as a killer. Travis's reaction suggests a guilty conscience. Travis is not the only walking contradiction in the film. Early on, one of his first cab fares is some John who hops in the back seat with a lady of the evening. However, this particular John bears an uncanny resemblance to political candidate Charles Palantine. Hell, for all we know, it probably is him. Perhaps this is one more reason that sets Travis over the edge after Betsy rejects him. At one point, Travis storms into Betsy's campaign headquarters and threatens her life, telling her that, "You're in a hell, and you'll die with the rest of them. Why won't you call me?" Travis harshly deems Betsy to be a cold and distant liar like everyone else, especially women. According to Travis's rationale, Betsy is just a hypocrite who works for an even bigger one. Shortly afterwards, the film brings us to one of its most notable sequences in which Travis is about to drop off his latest passenger, played by director Martin Scorsese in a cameo appearance. The passenger turns out to be a kindred spirit to Travis, albeit in a screwed up way, as he too was scorned by his own love interest, in this case his own wife, who apparently is cheating on him. The tension in this scene is thick as Travis braces himself for this whacked out homicidal loon to spaz out at any given moment. However, the passenger rambles on about how he's going to kill his wife with a .44 Magnum, repeatedly asking Travis, You must think I'm sick, huh?" It's okay, you don't have to answer that. No doubt that this man planted the idea in the cabbie's mind to buy that aforementioned gun later on in the film. Now, the only thing I did not understand in this scene is this dude's gleeful inquiry of what a .44 Magnum does to a woman's cat. Now, threatening to kill your wife is horrible enough, but why would you want to shoot her pet too? I didn't get that part. That just flew over my head. In any case, Travis soon afterwards finds a new purpose to dedicate his days to. He eventually encounters Iris, a 12-year-old prostitute working for a cheap pimp named Sport. Travis and Iris meet together in another memorable scene over breakfast, an inverse of his coffee and pie date with Betsy. Only instead of acting as a potential suitor, Travis plays the role of Big Brother, urgently imploring young Iris to give up her ratchet lifestyle and to go back home to her family. She casually tells him that she's more or less satisfied with her situation, but Travis's words seem to take some hold when he tells her how much her pimp actually disrespects her. His obsession over saving Iris from a life of prostitution becomes his all-consuming duty in life, and he dedicates himself to his warped cause in both mind and body. He trains his body and even purchases a small cache of weapons, ready to wage war against the scum of the streets. It's also interesting to note that Travis endeavors to kill the father figures of the two women he fixates his attention over. With Betsy, Travis fails an assassination attempt on Palantine and narrowly escapes arrest, which is yet another way of his utter failure to get close to Betsy once again, the unattainable ideal. However, Travis is successful in not only killing Sport, Iris's skeevy father figure, but he also lays waste to the other pimps and degenerates like a one-man army in the film's climactic, bullet-riddled, blood-soaked, Punisher-esque shootout. Iris, unlike Betsy, is the reachable damsel that Travis succeeds in rescuing. Now, there has been some debate over the film's ending sequence in which Travis's vigilante rampage is lauded with praise from the press. We see a tracking shot of newspaper clippings praising Travis as a hero who saved an innocent child from a lifetime of turning tricks. Some critics and fans have opined that the ending sequence is Travis's dying thoughts, a delusional fantasy in which he has finally become someone of real worth in the end, and not just another faceless loner. As for me, I don't believe that the ending is in his mind at all. To me, it's clear that he survived the shootout and he's found that sense of self-worth he was searching for. But man, what a totally effed up way of discovering it. I mean, damn. Anyway, Travis still remains on his cabbie grind, and when he picks up his last fare in the film, Betsy, we get a sense that he feels totally vindicated by his actions. Betsy, previously repulsed by Travis, is now awed at his newfound celebrity. After he drops her off at her stop, Travis drives away and watches his old crush shrink in his rearview mirror. Well, I guess he really is okay this time. I mean, sure, he did try to assassinate a presidential candidate, threatened a woman who rejected him, asked his own reflection if it was talking to him at one point, shot up a bunch of people, and is very likely to be a racist, but maybe he has finally reached a breakthrough. Or has he? In the very last moment of the film, Travis adjusts his rearview mirror, but this moment is abruptly cut with a weird sound effect. This very brief yet askew moment tells us that Travis is still sick. Throughout the film, it becomes more and more apparent that Travis's sense of isolation and loathing is not driven by external factors so much as by his own decisions. After all, he's still driving around the same so-called diseased environment he hates so much. Nothing has changed for Travis because he pretty much likes his vicious cycle of self-hatred and violence. And that final moment of him looking back in his rearview mirror is the beginning of a new countdown. It's only a matter of time before he fixates on a new obsession, a new hatred, a new target. You know, considering how the press portrayed Travis as a hero, maybe he could turn his next potential vigilante crusade into a book deal, or a movie, or hey, even a video game. How does that sound? Yeah, thank goodness that shit got cancelled. Now, when talking about Taxi Driver, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the moody and evocative score by the great Bernard Herrmann, who also delivered scores in such classic films such as Citizen Kane, Vertigo, and Psycho. And Taxi Driver is just one of his many masterpieces. And as always, thank you for watching. I'm Victor Omoayo, and there's more video essay goodness to be had on my V Knowledge channel.